You are now live.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Laura Ann Edwards, and I am delighted to kick off workshop 3 of 3 of Visual Thinking for Science and Critical Thinking with the one and only Tom Wujec. It's also the last AMA of this 7-month series of incubators here on Polyplexus called The Art and the Science of Systems Thinking. But it's not the end of this topic. This incubator 6 will be open for a few more days for any of you who really want to get in some last minute debate and conversation and resources to share amongst ourselves. There will also be a sort of concluding wrapping paper, including some of the visuals that come out of this workshop today. And it's just the start of an open source conversation around systems tools and schemas for the world's benefit. Anyway, okay, so without further ado, take it away, Tom.
Thanks, Laura. And welcome back, everyone, for session 3 of visual thinking using images to collaborate, to explore, collaborate, and to persuade. So what we're going to do today is the following. We're going to do a quick recap again. Why? Because it's important to have these ideas fresh, and there's a lot of ideas, and we want to make sure that you understand each of them, how they all fit together. But more, we'll spend the lion's share of our time working through a number of key visual problems that we can work through through pen and paper to better persuade, better communicate, better illustrate our ideas. And so our panelists, our workshop participants are going to continue to elaborate on the ideas that they started with last week. So let's recap. Visual thinking is a fantastic but sadly underused tool to help us think, collaborate, and to persuade. They help us deepen our understanding of ideas by simply making them visual, creating a visual form for concrete and abstract problems and processes. Visual thinking allows us to collaborate more effectively and perhaps more deeply with others because we have a common visual frame of reference. And visual tools allow us to persuade people, to guide them through a path to help them shift their thinking, help them shift their feeling, help them change their behavior. So it's a very powerful tool when we know the language. And of course, it's very much built on systems thinking. The more we can express our ideas through visual thinking, the more clear our systems models are. So again, here we're using a pretty liberal definition of a systems model. We're including visual diagrams. So we're focusing again on persuasion today. So a quick recap. See again, last time I tried to do it under 7 minutes. I think I was 15. Let's see if I can do it less. We did a quick design exercise called Draw How to Make Toast. And each of you hopefully did a quick drawing to illustrate the steps involved in making crispy, crunchy, warm bread. And what's interesting is that everyone draws a slightly different picture that represents their mental model of what's important in the drawing. Some people draw pictures of people, some people draw pictures of the supply chain, but every picture, more or less, has a collection of nodes and links. Later, we introduce the idea of territories, but the nodes are the parts, usually the nouns, the links show the flow or the connections between them. Systems models consists of nodes and links, also in territories. Different people have different one of the benefits of drawing out ideas is that we get to see each person's biased mental model. Americans draw pictures with toasters. Many Europeans, not all, draw pictures with frying pans. And students, you got to ask them. Energy executives draw pictures very often, but 60% of them with electrical outlets, much more. So drawing allows us to explain processes, illustrate structure, identify alternatives, pose hypothesis, and communicate succinctly. So in our thinking section, we went through 5 key areas. We looked at the power of images, what are the elements in systems thinking, and we went deep into nodes, territories, and links. The combination of these provide us with tools to think about how we can think using visual models. One of the simple visual descriptions kind of looks like this. We go through this element of cognition and images. We go through a process of externalizing images and then internalizing them. Each aspect, each node gives us useful tools to figure out what our blocks are and also where we can improve. So cognition is about forming those images internally, even just the idea of, maybe I should turn my thoughts into a crisp image. Externalization is the physical and mental act of expressing those ideas, and the actual images are the end results, which of course we internalize, we make meaning from them. So it's an iterative loop. Highly simplified, of course, the brain is much more, there's a lot more steps than this simple 5-node model. So images we looked at, and why images? Again, they attract attention, they establish a sense of reality, even if it isn't true, like these old maps. They help us think, like these Feynman diagrams. They introduce structure to coordinate a tremendous amount of information, such as these very large Sankey diagrams that show energy distribution. And I believe the future, increasingly as we work in these hybrid offices, is having these large shared visualization spaces. And these exist in the car companies, automotive, aerospace, military, many other places, to be able to make a great deal of information visible and understandable. So I think that's very much the future as we bring digital tools to make these images more data-driven and interactive. The practice of internalization is really critical, because we can take this huge amount of text, it's actually not that much, which is hard to parse, and then turn it into a simple diagram that is easier to parse. So that's interesting, and that's just one of many examples of how we can translate information from one form to another form. Great examples. We looked at the portion of the brain that processes images. Those of you who haven't seen this before, what do you think it is? Is it 10%, 20%? In fact, it's about 75, between 75 and 80%. If we really oversimplified this, it turns out that there are a number of pathways that process information visually. And if we can take advantage of how each of these pathways work, we improve the quality of our images. We can design better images to engage people, whether it's in front of a whiteboard or whether it's in front of a rich document. So in some cases, we looked at different infographics, such as the Titanic, so very rich, many dozens of nodes on this, and our eye is continually darting. And again, we got to have pictures of cats. Cats and brains together, emotional, mental part, really key part. So again, the point of that is that our eye darts and makes meaning to each of these. So systems are visual models that help us make sense, translate that soft, fuzzy, how do you represent ideas, into a clear form. And there's distinct steps that we take: a process of formulation, a process of using the language, putting it into a visual form, and then physically expressing it with sketches or Keynote or PowerPoint, whatever tool you end up using. Systems, as we mentioned, consist of nodes, territories, and links. Nodes are the constituent parts. Territories establish an overall structure or topology, and links illustrate connections and flows. And there are endless variations of different systems models, each performing a different job. So some are very simple and some are complex. We looked at simple ones that CEOs, CMOs, CTOs, chief operating officers, strategy officers, and financial officers tend to prefer. So again, these are visual models to express the mental models of what's typically important to each of these people that run a business, or the C-suite that's in the executive center of your brain. So by understanding this and parsing information into this form, again, you'll be doing this. That's why we're going through this content, to take the core question and figure out what are the nodes, what are the territories, what are the links, so that we can have the tool perform the job that we want it to perform. what do nodes look like? Well, we went through a bit of a drawing class in the first exercise where we drew different examples. And so, most of us aren't really taught how to do this, and many of us don't keep the tools. If there's one takeaway that I would encourage you to have is get these, right? Get some really good markers, blank journals, and do some doodling and do some drawing. And get a tablet or 2 or 3 or 10 in my case, maybe more, and just practice visual thinking. The more you practice, the better you'll become. And when we get back into physical spaces, take advantage of whiteboards, and portable and also physical, because they perform many important good jobs. This, by the way, are some ones that I've used for some of the courseware that I've developed. We did a bunch of exploring with different types of drawing, and the key idea is get really connected with your drawing. Take your dot for a walk. And so the act of thinking, creating simple visual illustrations of the parts of a system really is a powerful tool to help us make sense of things. We looked at various types of diagrams. I think I'm pressing my advanced button one too many. Stop. There we go. And so there's a visual language, and we're all familiar with all of these, and we'll post this at the end so that you can use this as a reference point, as a way to organize information visually and have your nodes arranged in this form to help them do the job that you want to communicate. And so there's a whole range. I won't go through the details of that, but again, it's a really powerful tool used in scientific discovery and visualization in many ways. And we looked at a bunch of creative ways of organizing nodes, the elements in different structures, and you can see this amazing collection of structures that people have developed over the last 140 years or so to illustrate the periodic table of elements. No one is perfectly correct, but each illustrates some aspect of the underlying reality. And of course, there's an underlying aesthetic with this as well. So the point here is that sometimes we need to readjust and rethink the structures because it's clear, it performs a better job of what we're trying to communicate. So we tend to get fixed on the one way that we are used to. So, and then we also looked at a number of links. We didn't go into that in much detail. We'll do that later today. So that's kind of the first wrap up. So what do we do last time? So what we did last time is we did much more of a workshop and explored these 5 steps of figuring out what job communicating an idea, expressing it, organizing information, refining, and sharing it. So I'm just going to now kind of go quickly to what we did and some of the questions that we looked at. So Greg, you asked the question, how can I align people for a moonshot? And you described, and I did some illustrations of what that might look like. So I think my illustration here, which I'll post, includes the following. Oh, by the way, isn't this interesting? Without the diagram, I don't think I would have remembered what you mentioned. And now here we have a diagram of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements that you thought would be really critical in how should teams communicate when engaging in moonshot programs where the stakes are high, and the research that you did included the following. You'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about symbols, reality, activity. And I did some sketches afterwards, which I'll share later, a little further on about what that might look like. Shelly, you asked a question. How do you choose a common language for some of the work that you're working on? You actually built out a Mural board here that illustrates some of the different customers, the problems that they're facing, the language, and I said, that's great, but I pushed back on you saying, is that really the problem you want to solve? And that's going to get directly to reframing problems. So you'll continue to work on that. Third is Laura, how do I map a series of incubators? And then I push back saying, well, to what end? What will this be used for? And then finally, how do we prepare for UFOs? God, I got to tell you, I'm seeing UFOs everywhere now. It's on CNN. It's on Time. It's so I kind of went down the squirrel hole, and it's like, what a great, interesting topic. And so I actually pulled out a bunch of research and content, drew some pictures as well, which we'll share later. So awesome topics here. So these are the 4 that we'll continue to tackle. I hope at home, or wherever you happen to be, you are now thinking about what communication problem you would like to tackle, or perhaps more generally, what problem would you like to tackle? Okay, that wasn't 7 minutes, but again, it's useful because we're going to refer to each of those tools. So here are the steps that we're going to go through in the course of our discussion. First, reframe the question. Is this the right question that we want to tackle? Second, we're going to express those. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Sorry, that's not the right one. Let's try that again. Here we go. We're going to focus on the question. You're going to figure out who is the audience. So if the audience is just you, then you're in the thinking part. If you're working with a collaborator, you're in the context of just you and another person or a few people. If you are trying to persuade someone or a group of people when you may not be there with the graphic, you have a different group. So who is your audience? Next, what is it that you're looking to get them to do? What's the shift in thinking, in feeling, and action? How do you then, armed with that knowledge, pick the right kinds of diagram or diagrams? And then finally, refine, which includes express and test. So I'll be working with each of you to kind of work through each of the, your topics. So let's dig in. Really, what problem are you trying to solve? And it's important to ask that question and to reframe, because we often jump in with the first good idea that we think we have. And there's, in fact, a bias. Adam Grant has now produced a beautiful book called Rethink, so I highly recommend it. So framing the right problem is really critical. So you recognize him, I hope, Mr. Ford, who in 1910 and beyond was looking to improve the Ford Motor Company and asked these 3 key questions: efficiency, speed up production, and reduce cost. And of course, out of this and with his team, produced the moving factory line that transformed manufacturing, borrowing from other industries, and created dramatically lowered the costs, increased the quality, and all kinds of great stories of how this actually played out. And so the number of cars that he sold dramatically increased as a result of this. My goodness, from just tens of thousands to just under 1 million over the course of a decade. Then there came this other guy named Mr. Sloan, Alfred Sloan, who asked a bunch of other questions that look like this. What do our customers really want in a car? How would they like to buy them, and when would they like to buy them? And so these reframed questions led to a series of other activities, like creating different models, different installment plan, yearly trade-ins. And here's what happened in the market share over the course of the next decade. Ford went from 50 to down to almost 10%, 15%, and then grew back up again when he retooled. It took him 7 years to retool and to reframe these questions. Obviously oversimplifying here. So the question though is, be clear about what's the best problem to solve. And by the way, there are visual methods to figure these out. There are visual frames of reference and card decks and so on. And again, if you're interested in this, I'll send you a link to a site where you can get more information about this. But each of these frame a different different aspect of business. These are some, there are endless frames to pick from, but figuring this out is really pretty critical. Now, we're going to now switch over to the Mural board. And what I'd like you to do, oh, we've got a bunch of lines here. I'm going to just delete those lines. So Laura and Greg and Farhan and Shelly, please go to the Mural board and start populating your boards, and then we're going to look at the questions. What I would like you to do is to ask at least 3 questions of what problem you're trying to solve. Put it into the form of a sticky note and then post them up. We got a timer. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. And those of you at home, go ahead and do that. Hopefully you have those tools. Hopefully you have sticky notes. If not, get a free subscription to Miro. I think you get 3 boards for free. There are other wonderful sites as well. Mural is also a terrific application. And if not, just go ahead and start sticking it in your notebook. 2 minutes. What problem are you trying to solve? I think I should have some sound effect here. Oh, that's weird. Stop time. Oh, I know, because I've got the music, I've got press here. We're going to do chill beats. There we go. Go ahead and start posting your sticky notes. Again, just using sticky notes. We're going to go ahead and type in 3 questions at least. You know, one of the principles of design thinking is don't stop at the first one. Maybe one day they'll do this computational music and the music will just naturally resolve at 2 minutes and 4 minutes. Great. Okay, so let's start. Laura, I don't see the questions. Were you having some problems on, or do you have your questions listed here?
I have remedial Miro challenges of trying to figure out how to type on a tablet. So
you're on a tablet. Okay.
So I was struggling, so I will type it in on my laptop.
I can, or I can. Do you have the questions listed?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you
put them in the chat?
Why don't you just tell me, and I will just go ahead and type them in.
Okay. So democratizing access to systems thinking.
So can you put that into the form of a question?
How can I make systems thinking accessible to the think tank set? Or just accessible is fine.
Okay, awesome, great question. Number 2.
How can I harvest and share the learnings from this incubator series.
My question is, how can I type faster, more accurately? And the third.
The last one is, how can I reframe systems thinking as a key lifeboat tool set?
It's a key
Lifeboat.
lifeboat.
Mm-hmm. Because I often say, whose point of view do you want in your lifeboat?
Huh.
I would certainly want at least one systems thinker in the group.
Great. Okay. So this is great. And so we're going to pause here for now. And I think, see, again, the power of putting the problem statement into a question is a really critical activity. It forces you, does a couple things. First, a question, as we learned before, is a statement that demands a response. So it's like a little program that turns something on. So sharp questions allow us to, we will know when we have a better answer. So the putting the problem statement into a how might we, how can I, in which way, et cetera, is a powerful tool. Again, a classic tried and true method from design thinking. Terrific. Let's go to our, oh, do you want to take a picture? Go ahead. I heard a little click.
No, I've got the board. I can do it.
Okay. Okay, great. I'm going to just move some of these here. And do you mind if I just kind of put them into separate notes? And the reason for that is we'll move them around. So we've got one note here. So making the shift from a linear to a
Tom, the last note was a duplicate, so don't worry about that.
Okay, so let's review your, make sure I'm just going to put this off to the side for now, and we'll look in more carefully. How do we improve organizational and interpersonal communication in technical moonshot initiatives? You have the same typing skills as I do. How do we
I get in a hurry.
I know. How do successful technical moonshots communicate differently?
Take the S out of moonshots. Yeah.
Moonshot teams communicate differently.
Question mark.
And let's put it to a third one.
And that appears to be a duplicate, but essentially the how do we onboard new team members for moonshot initiatives? And that is from a communication standpoint, or an interpersonal and organizational communication standpoint.
So once again, how do we onboard new team?
How do we? It's really onboarding. Okay. So we talk about how do we improve organizational and interpersonal communication and technical moonshot initiatives. The second question would be, how do we more effectively onboard new team members so that they understand these principles? And thirdly, what's different about the communication that occurs organizationally and interpersonally in successful moonshot initiatives?
Is great. So three excellent questions. I'm going to give you, going to challenge some of them as well, because that's part of a job of a facilitator is to question, and help you refine.
Sure.
So we'll get to that once we actually get to the audience. Okay, so Farin, I'm going to just size these here, and so they all fit in here because I'm kind of like that, if you don't mind. And now here we go. So tell us your 6 questions.
Yeah, just the beginning point. There are questions galore, but just kind of getting my own thinking straight. So this is, I think these are good set of questions. You just kind of begin asking the question.
Awesome.
So
how do I go ahead?
Go ahead. No, what were we going to say?
I was going to list some of the questions. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, just a little something, just a quick refresher. So I've been observing a lot of media messaging around UFOs, and with that, my question is: so what am I supposed to do with this information coming my way around UFOs? Why is it being amplified right now? What is the bigger situation that I should be looking to uncover, or that is going to be revealed at this point? So that's kind of my
thought. So what am I supposed to do with this information? Okay. Second, I think I heard you say, why is this happening now? Did I mishear you? And then you said something at the end, which is interesting. The big reveal. So
yeah, so yes, the big reveal. What is the reveal? And there is something being revealed. We're getting a peek into it, and so what is the bigger picture? I always like to apply my gray matter towards kind of getting my own thoughts straight without being fed thoughts. So that's my intention. My intention is to figure it out for myself.
That's awesome, and you'll then visualize this as well as you're thinking.
Yeah, and I'll just mention something else. So the way I typically work is I'll do my diligence, and then I will share what I know with others. So my step one would be the thinking bit, as you mentioned earlier on, and step number two would as soon as I've got something that I feel confident about, then I would want to share that with people. Mm-hmm. And with the intention of getting their input.
And would you change your model as a result of that?
Oh, absolutely. The model was there to enlighten us. That's all. It doesn't matter whether it's mine or not.
That's amazing. One of the things that when you first introduced the topic, I used to study astrophysics. I was a planetarium writer and producer. I wrote planetarium shows on UFOs. Did a bunch of deep dives into the history. What's the term? The historicity of unidentified apparitions going back actually thousands of years, and have formulated a mental model of the power of bias. In fact, we've even where is it? Here. Have been incorporating a set of bias tools. I'm not sure if I showed this last time. Of there's about 300 or so cognitive biases that have been identified, and so really kind of getting clear about what are the different kinds of biases. And what I found so interesting with these biases and also logical fallacies is how they shape so much of our thinking. So it's a fantastic tool to help organize and test our thinking as well. So what a great tool to refine and sharpen. Okay, this is great. Thank you for that elaborate. Anything else before we return?
I think, as you also mentioned, this whole topic of wicked problems, and this is where this is headed. Systems of systems kind of a situation.
Yep.
And unveiling. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am kind of doubling down on this because it's an interesting, juicy topic. But a wicked problem first formulated in 1963, is it? Horst Rittel and Melvin Weber. actually the first definitions of wicked problem. There were 10 definitions, and the first definition was that defining a wicked problem was itself a wicked problem. You know, when you teach at Berkeley, I guess that it's a little academic, but there's interesting qualities of wickedness such as complexity, fluidity, emotional charge, of course, bias, worldview, and urgency, and a variety of others. And so we can never solve a wicked problem kind of by definition, but you can tame it, you can manage and exploit it. And to do that, we need to tame each of these qualities, reduce the complexity, figure out the underlying dynamics, diffuse the emotional charge, make the bias visible. And again, there are methods for each of those. Okay, now we're moving to Shelly, to your questions here. So Shelly, can you describe your three key questions?
Sure. So what we're trying to do at a high level is what is essentially a business problem where you may have N+1 systems that each call something a different thing. And for the purpose of messaging, purpose of selling, purpose of putting language into the UI of a product, it becomes a really hairy problem. So the three questions I came up with in terms of like, how do we get to the root of the value that will translate across different organizational semantics is number one, how do we generically define value? Two, what language do the prospects use? And three, how do we resolve this to make the message clear? And yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, just to sort of put an example to this, you have a large prospect that calls their end user a trainer. You have another large prospect that calls their end user a facilitator. And then you have the system itself, which defines that end user as N whatever. How do you message through the language, through the visuals, etc.? How do you message that you're all talking about the same thing?
I think what you're talking about is actually a very common problem that is often ignored and missed at great cost. When I'm referred to as a user, in some contexts, I kind of go, I don't think I'm a user. I'm just using, whatever. We know the views. I had a client some years ago who was a medical equipment manufacturer, and went through the value proposition view, and they had 6 fundamental stakeholders or end users, buyers, and so on. Even again, use customers, and they were very different from medical distribution companies to hospital buyers to physicians to family members to the people that would actually use this inhaler. And so the whole value proposition and what problems you're trying to solve for each person were dramatically different. So getting clear about that is so vital. So that really brings us to our next step, which is figuring out who is your audience and what they are currently thinking, feeling, and doing, and what you would like them to think, feel, and do. And it's strange. I had a graphic in there. Okay, I'll just go to a single a diagram. So what we're going to do here is actually let's go ahead and in this figure out who is the recipient of the problem, the issue, the product, so this is like who will do that. So what I'd like you to do now is to simply list them. There might be one, just yourself. There might be 15. And please put them on separate sticky notes. Again, when we itemize information, when we turn things from one big block of text into a series of manipulable nodes, then we can perform more information. We can perform more tasks on this. So we're going to take another 2 minutes, and please go ahead to start listing who is the audience. One per sticky note. Let's do Cosmic Vibe, shall we? So those of you at home, please go ahead and start writing this out. If you have sticky notes, write them out in sticky notes, and be clear and assume that there may be more than one person. If you're just doing it for yourself, great. It's yourself, and that is all you need. If you will then want to communicate, collaborate, share with others, list the people. You may want to put individuals that you'd want to connect with. More specific, often the better. At this point, what we can also do is personas. We're not going to do that right now because we don't have that much time for our conversation. But you certainly can draw pictures. So taking from the skills of the first one, what would that person look like? In Miro and other tools, you can actually go ahead and draw little stick figures, and you drag in little elements of people to illustrate who people are. So Greg, I'm noticing that you're putting the people, I think, on the question area. So if you could move it to the audience. We're just creating a little visual equation of the problems to solve for the people, and then we're going to elaborate on this more quickly. 13 seconds left. Those of you who aren't finished, just keep on writing as I talk. 7 seconds. Music should just fade down. It's only 2021. Okay. Laura, your audience. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah. So think tanks, I'm at core, at least starting out to make tools to hope to foster systems processes at the think tank level.
Okay.
Certainly trying to clarify this for my own thinking so I can do a better job of that. Mm-hmm. The goal ultimately is to be from any angle cookbook style, accessible and intelligible to all of these ongoing stakeholder groups, which conveniently happen to be very much the Polyplexus demographic.
Very nice. These are great, and what I would then encourage you to do afterwards, if you continue this, is to itemize them. So, which think tanks? Give me a persona or 2 or 3 of a citizen scientist. Is she working in the Philippines as a 22-year-old student? Is a retired map maker, etc. And so on throughout. So these are great. You're going to pick. Actually, what I would like you to do is to put them in order vertically with the impact. So which are the ones that would have the biggest impact? So I'm going to come back to you in a second, so you can just sort them around.
Okay.
Next, Greg. That's great. Okay. Who's this for?
Essentially, these are the individuals that would need to be involved in the communications process for a technical moonshot. And so we have the technical team members themselves, onboarding team members, technical management, and the organization as a whole.
Great. I'm going to give you a different one for you to fill out. Actually, I'm going to create a little diagram here for you, which looks like that. And I'm going to have you fill out a little 2x2 matrix. One there, and that's a horizontal audience. Wow, this guy is. Oh, sorry, I didn't have it in. I had a curved line, so we have a little gravity distortion field here, and so here's the difficulty. And now the impact. So if it's a low impact within a group, so these might all be in the same cluster, they might be in a different cluster. Some of them might be low difficulty and high difficulty. So low impact, low difficulty, lower left, high impact, high difficulty, upper right. I'm gonna let you work on that one. Okay, moving to foreign. Who's this for?
Initially for me, and so I can get to a point where I've got information organized in some kind of coherent manner so I can share it with others. That's the next bit.
Nice.
And the idea in terms of the first folks that I would want to share this with are the ones who are, first of all, interested in this topic area. Number two, those who want to bring in their unique perspective into the mix and help evolve it. So the idea is to evolve and move towards a shared understanding, whatever that might be.
That's amazing. You can see the community of that. That's terrific. Okay, I'm going to leave that with you. Actually, maybe you could itemize, 3 or 4 people that you think, kinds of people who you think might be interested, might be media, etc. So I'll let you, elaborate on that. And Shelly, you've got 6 here. And who can you quickly describe?
Yeah, so these are the persona in that product lifecycle. Customers who pays for it, end users who uses it, designers who designs it, engineers who build it, BD who sells it, and analysts who evaluate whether it works or not.
Nice. So you could also do a 2x2 matrix that illustrates the difficulty and the impact. But for now, let's leave it. I don't think we need to do that now. So let's quickly review what others have done. And Laura, so going back to you, so we have the sequence. So you begin with yourself, followed by think tanks, and so isn't that interesting? Once you put it into a visual form, suddenly it snaps, it pops, and then you then can prioritize the sequence for this. I'm going to continue going a little at a bigger pace here. Oh, this is interesting. Greg, you've got technical team members in the upper right, high impact, high difficulty. Okay, so you're going to, I'm going to ask you to pick one of these folks. Farhan, you're still typing. Okay, so this is great. So now I'd like to move to the next topic, which is to create a map of the shift that you'd like to have happen. So what this does is it begins to target the current state and the desired state, and you then use the tool to figure out what you clarify what job the tool does for you, and figure out how a diagram can be used to move people, guide people, cajole them, pull them, catapult them from one current state to a desired state. So here's the steps that you need to take. I'd like for you to pick one of your stakeholders. Laura, I'm going to ask you to pick. You can either pick yourself or you pick anyone you want. And what you can do is you can drag a sticky note over, but if you press the Option key, then you're on a tablet, so I'm not sure how that would happen. You could probably just copy and paste it. I'm going to do that for you no, not because you want to pick the ones that you want. So copy and paste a sticky note and then move it over to the middle of the shift area.
Okay.
Greg, same with you. You've already done one as well. So I would recommend copying and pasting because it leaves the earlier thinking and diagram free. Okay, so Farin, I think it initially is for you. So just go ahead and option drag it over. And Shelly, you've done this. Great. Okay, so next, Shelly, if you could shrink that note down to about 1/4 of its size, that would be great in the shift. Next, I'd like for you to then identify the current state and the desired state. So the current state might be, let's just talk about, I'm going to actually use the, no, actually this is fine. So the current state is what people are currently thinking about. So their ideas, their feelings, and then the actions. So that's it's not the only organizational tool you can use, but you can start with that one. So what you want to do is to really think about your user and what they're kind of where they're at from your perspective, even better from their perspective, and then figure out where you would like them to be. So designers who design a product from, say, not thinking about the nomenclature to thinking about the nomenclature, from not having a standard toolkit to adopting a standard toolkit. Those might be some areas. For end users, it might be feeling confusion or that the product that you're trying to pitch is not fully relevant or tailored to them, to feeling that it is fully tailored to them. From feeling a little confused and agitated to feeling connected. From not knowing what to do to knowing what to do. Again, I don't know the details of the product, so I can't ask you more specific questions, but you know the idea. So go ahead and start mapping out the current and the desired state. So at least one on each side, and preferably more and in swim lanes. So a thinking would be a current mental model to a desired mental model. So go ahead and duplicate your sticky notes. Yep, that's awesome what you're doing there, Shelly, and then you can retype them in. So I'm going to give you another 2 minutes to do this. This, of course, is ridiculously not enough amount of time. But let's move into a sunshine jam because, oh, 6 speeds. The shift that you want to have happen. Think behaviors. What's the state of affairs? Again, what action do you want people to take? This is a great source. This is a really fantastic collaboration tool. Put this up onto a whiteboard. I mean, we use this diagram is just such a staple, such a standard. So Laura, I'm seeing you're putting obstacles. Wanted to do that's a third step, but we'll dig in now. So think tanks are the group, and so silos to. So I don't understand. Can you explain the silos to flow common language? What does this mean?
Sure. Super common around a wicked problem, a big gnarly problem with lots of stakeholders to bring everybody around the table. That is an interdisciplinary magical moment that doesn't last for very long. People are then dispatched to work really hard on deadline and budget with very little cross flow between those teams, those siloed expert teams who are no longer reframing and adjusting together. So research tends to happen in silos. All the incentives and expertise and community foster silos.
Okay, so do you mind if I just add to your diagram?
No, not. I'm counting
so what
on
you
it.
just said here. So we have one of the challenges in visual thinking is we put a single word down, and you know exactly what that word means, silos. And I have an idea of what it might mean, but I didn't know. So the act of simply typing that out makes it more clear and more understandable. What I heard you say so clearly is that research occurs in silos. That's the current state. And the desired state is, I think, what you said is research to occur in what's the opposite, or what's the desired state? In silos?
I'm going to say networks.
Okay. In networks, non-siloed networks.
Yes.
Maybe we could say connected. What other adjectives might you use?
Other than connected, open communication, aware. There's an awareness of a spatial awareness of the bigger project and teams.
Great. So let's just move these off to the side for the time being.
Okay.
And there, I'm going to move this guy here. I'm going to just change this image here so it's a little kind of cleaner. So we know it's for think tanks. And the current state is that research occurs in silos, and you want to move it to, it occurs in connected open aware networks, weird casing. You see the shift that happens now? So again, just by stating that, that would be great. Okay, let's do a second one here. So we've got flow, common language, expert teams as DARPA defines that. Can you generalize the current state of this orange sticky note? So,
sure. So I would say that research experts in a particular, that end up in a particular silo, that are brought in as thought to be part of a team working on a big problem, don't necessarily have the language to understand, to Shelly's point of stakeholders using very different terms and mental models. So the CRISPR scientists may not understand the AI folks, and yet they're all working on the same things. And that's a problem. And you don't have to be domain experts, but there needs to be a common language for the best outcome.
nice.
Right. So that's what this systems Rosetta Stone is all about, so that it is easier for them to do that.
Okay, so here's, again, just as a facilitator, what I would then do is rephrase this. And so say research experts do have a shared common language.
Yep.
And so I'd also want to know whether this is a means to an end or an end itself. If we were going to reframe this and go, well, so why is that important? Why is it important to have a common language? What problem does the common language solve?
I personally think that a lot of talent and resources are being left on the table. We are not maximizing our chances of survival. Back to the lifeboat. You're not
Okay.
getting the best ideas out of the best people at the right times. That's unacceptable. The stakes are too high.
Best ideas are not. I'm paraphrasing, so please tell me if you are okay with this.
Yep.
Okay. And so what I'm going to do here, so I would now change these colors of sticky notes. And so I'll make that a nice, that is, and this one a nice purple here, and then go to the state of talent is being, oops, fully, you can see my talent as a typist. And the best ideas are not surfacing, the best ideas well, dramatize it now. Make it that so I really care. So go, you know, what's the emotional impact?
We solve climate change.
That's a specific problem, but the best ideas have the most impact. I mean, so that's what I'm looking for.
Right. It's a totally new, I mean, right, you know, it's the ultimate collaboration. I'm not sure what you're trying to provoke out of me. Sorry.
Again, we're creating paired communications here. So this desired state. So I'm going to click on this little connection here. So here's the desired state from one to another. And so again, when we draw this simple visual model, what are these? These are swim lanes, but oops. But they're also, these are our nodes. And in Miro, there's this great little tool that you can create nodes here. And so we can now begin to really clarify what the purpose, like what's the problem you're really trying to solve here, and put it into a form that accurately you know, describes situation. This again, we're just really thin slicing here, but what we would do in a kind of a much richer full-on discussion is to test each of these and go, you know, research occur in silos? Does it? What does that look like? What does the data actually tell us? Is there an infographic that really illustrates the severity of the problem? And then we would show what an ideal state would look like. So there are, if we have time, I'll show you some examples of what that actually looks like. So this, so you see the gap, and then you can insert the tools that will address the specific problems underneath. Research doesn't have a shared common language. Research experts do have a shared common language. So then we illustrate that if that actually is the core, one of the core shifts, we then produce diagrams to show the shift, right? And to help people make the shift. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Talent not being utilized, fully being utilized, and so on. So we could, I mean, typically in a diagram like this, we'd go probably another 30 to 40 minutes to really expand this, put in nodes and links, and then you would see, oh, I get it. And so making a clear visual representation of it is makes it pop. So compare that with the initial version that looked like this. So actually it looked, and so the point of it is when we apply questions and that get really clear of the structure, we get more tangible activities. It's simply the process that we apply, and applying this process becomes super powerful for us to then take the next step of solving the problem. And by the way, once you have these diagrams, you can then build and expand on them, and really create an elaborate description. Okay, so I feel like we're about 27.5% there, but I think we get the idea there. So let's any questions or?
No, that's great. I understand how to take the next steps.
Great. Okay, so Greg, Okay, so can you explain, so again, let me just kind of gussy this up. So it's at the center here. So I'm going to move these two obstacles off to the side for now, just so we can focus. And we've got, and again, do you mind if I just move some elements on your?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
So, okay. So we've got, do you want to explain these? And I'm going to put them into sticky notes. But so let's just start with the first pair on top. Sure.
When a person comes onto a team, particularly a moonshot team, a technical team with a lot at stake, they communicate differently. And so typically an onboarding person is not going to be familiar with how technical teams communicate effectively. They haven't, and usually there's a lack of experience or there's just a lack of awareness. And this is a learning curve for them.
Okay. So that is, that's awesome. So my next question is, let's elaborate on that. So I'm going to put these two guys in the bottom here. And so these are kind of our major nodes. I'm going to move this off to the side here. And so we have a major shift. I'm going to Miro, draw, click on that link, and then I'm connecting it to here. So we know that's the shift that we're looking to create. So let's now, I often like to just change color and make it a lighter shade of the same color. And that gives your eye a cue to go, that's a subset. So again, use color as a tool to organize the purpose of the nodes. In this case, we have the primary deep color. You can pick any color you want, but so again, your eye makes the connection. So let's go. So how does a newbie communicate, and then how does, what are the qualities of, let's begin with the desired state. What are the qualities of an effective team communication?
First of all, I think the onboarding team member needs to understand that everything that they say matters, and it always matters. And essentially that is meaningful communication. And so they need to understand that in their interactions with the team, both interpersonally and organizationally, that everything that they say is meaningful.
Okay, so that's so interesting. I had no idea. Okay, I'm gonna make this a little smaller, and we go from. So what would you say is the current state? So that, or kind of this.
Well, the current state is not. Yeah, it's just not understanding what matters when they communicate with a team, and without really knowing what, in things like how do you discuss which activities are important for the team, how do you discuss specialized knowledge that the person may have that's important for the team, how do you discuss, and these are dialogues, but what is your identity on the team? What are you providing? What are you contributing? You need to be aware of these things. And you also need to be aware of what the organization is asking of you. And every organization has an identity, and they speak and they have a certain way of conducting dialogues, as it were, or discourse, both through text and through language. And it's like learning a new language. It is, and you have to be aware. And I think Laura brought this up as on some items as well. You have to be aware of what that common language is, and you need to understand and fit in within that culture. And these things are critical. So if you can't discuss the language, the organization in the organization's language, you're basically speaking a foreign language, which is an interesting concept when you think about it, because communication breaks down. And so what are the expectations of the organization? Do you understand those? Are you able to communicate as an effective team member? And so it really comes down, I think, to meaningful communication.
Awesome. So here, what I would do is, these are great, and I tried to capture them, but fingers. So
Sure. Sure.
So underneath the big category of unfamiliar with how technical teams communicate effectively, and then understand, and then breaking it down from current to desired, and then go even further about what that actually would look like. So when people say identity, I certainly, I always find it interesting when organizations make an acquisition, and they often talk about the acquirer as they. And it takes anywhere from 6 months to a year often for organizations to go, oh, that they are we, because that sense of identity is, so that little shift is, I get it, it's just hugely profound, right? As being on both sides of the equation several times, I understand that, saying they to my team members was kept me with the identity of the previous, much more creative company as opposed to the mothership. And then over time, as you begin to know people, culture, as we go to we, I could see the they people not being part of the team, right? So there's that kind of magical transition. Even dissecting, making a timeline of what that actually happens can be an interesting visualization. So again, we've illustrated here, and then as with Laura, we're about 7% in, because I would want to go a little further, right? Because you've done this this work, and then just itemizing the shifts then provides you with the clues of what diagrams you'd want to use to show the shifts. So right now we're using this as a thinking tool, but this might actually end up being actually a communication tool when illustrated out. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to just pause this for here, and we're going to move to a shift from the limited to the actionable shift. Can you expand on that?
I'll just make a comment before we begin. It seems to me that I've chosen like a wicked problem type of situation, number one, and then I've got the simplest looking diagrams out there, so with the least amount of elaboration. So that's kind of funny.
We're going to, but we're going to elaborate on this, please.
Yeah. So it's really, I mean, this is like a caricature or a comic book version of what I'm trying to express here, where we want to be able, the current state is that there is little to no understanding in terms of what the situation looks like. So that's, yeah, we could go on around that. But where we want to end up, hopefully through rapid iterations, is in a state where we feel more confident in terms of the information that we have. Ultimately, so we can answer the question, is there something that we need to do? What is it that I should be doing? Perhaps that thing to be done is nothing. That's also a thing to be done. So that's the idea. The idea is to go from perhaps a situation of a lot of noise to honing in on one or more signals, whatever that might be.
That's great. And remember, I mentioned think, feel, and do, and you've actually itemized each of these clearly. Now I'm making them visible, and then allow you to reflect on them, see which is a priority, and so on. So think, feel, do is a classic. There's all kinds of diagrams for those. Again, hopefully we'll get to them. And so we can become a little bit more specific with the target. So confidence is a feeling; it's not a thought. And do is, let's see, it would be an action plan. So should there be a big reveal of what? So here we have no action plan. So no structure of action, which of course, you know, and anytime we begin with a new discipline, we don't have the landscape. And then here there would be an action plan. So that's interesting. So you could build up towards an action plan and clear. I actually drew some of those out because I was fascinated. I am fascinated with the topic. So from the feeling, how would you say you're feeling? If you're going to use 3 words to describe your feelings, what will they be about your current state?
The current state would be that, well, I'm excited by being able to solve this topic, first of all, or try to move, get some headway around this. So I'm excited, but many people might be very anxious if they feel that this is something that they really need to be concerned with. So, yeah. So
actually, let me write that down. Anticipating others. What's the emotion behind that?
I mean, there's on this topic area, for example, there are some folks, I can speak to something very close to home, like my family, okay? There's some folks who I can't, if I bring this topic up with them, you know that they're in complete denial. It's just not happening. It can't be true. Forget it. So there's that. On the other side of things as well, this is interesting. And then there are people like me who's been also like you, Tom, been keeping an eye on lots of different things, and so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it.
So if I put this framework here, unable to, so I guess I'm sort of trying to listen to what's behind this, unable to engage family and colleagues, to engaging family and colleagues. Am I overstepping that? Am I reading too much? Or in
terms of engagement, I mean, like there isn't any wrong person to engage on the topic. That's my perspective on the matter. It's like if I really want to do a thorough, I've been in situations where this is an abstract version of many other kind of situations. So like where I've been had to dynamically figure out the nature of the situation in a corporate setting, as a matter of fact. So and in that, so something comes my way. It seems very tactical. All of a sudden, I'm looking for a context for the thing. And I come up with a strategic or context for the tactical thing that's going on, and I validate that on a very rapid basis through multiple stakeholders, and continue doing that. And as soon as I've got on a very tight iteration level, and as I on the fly gain confidence by sensing this general sentiment around a particular topic area or so forth, I incorporate that in, I take new learnings in, and at the same time, I continue to manifest or create tangible outputs of these kind of situations. So that's kind of, so what I'm thinking in terms of my approach that I'm kind of alluding towards is kind of very much in line with that, with very tight iterations. This idea of iterations where you are, as opposed to something that's waterfall oriented for those folks who are in the software world and so forth. But the idea of iterations to me think of it as a spiral. So it's like a compacted life cycle of some process where you might be doing some requirements capture, design, implementation, testing, blah, 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 this and that, the other. And a waterfall thing might manifest itself in a year-long thing, where I'm talking about doing it on the fly at the speed of thought, in super rapid kind of sensing, formulating, and acting.
Okay.
It might be more than what you wanted, but
No, it's awesome. I mean, I think that really speaks to again. So so for the facilitators in the room. So what is it that I'm trying to listen for? So I'm trying to create a simple visual structure that helps to organize ideas and thoughts. So we can easily build up this sort of no line with a fill here, maybe do a nice kind of light color here. I'm going to bring these guys up to the top. Give me just a moment here. So again, what we're doing is we're just creating this really simple diagram, which sometimes can feel, that's just too simple, but it provides clarity of structure. Again, no single systems model is correct, but some are more useful than others. So
absolutely.
So this is just one. We're going to show some others in just a moment here. My goodness, time just flies when we're building these things up. So, the process is, of course, that.
By the way, I like this this depiction of current state, obstacle, desired state. Very, the way I typically think of uncovering or understanding certain things is, what does the current situation look like? What is the anticipated future situation look like? And then you can start talking about transition plans between the two. So
yeah, I mean, people have been using these for it's such a simple but powerful model to lead change in an organization. Sometimes it's like a simple whiteboard sketch, and sometimes these things can take full life of their own because situations are more complex. Again, there are many other frameworks to be able to illustrate those, some of which we've looked at. So what gets interesting here is, and again, we need to move on. So we go from thinking, so what's the current thinking? So be specific. That I'm going to call them UFOs are to, that's your current model, to UFOs are, so you would fill in the ... And the thing is, it's this would take us a very rich discussion, but it refers to the cognitive model of it, then how you feel about it now. So you said excited. I think you would also use the word curious and so on, and then confident about your opinions that you could share with your family. That's probably down here. It's an action plan. And so then really itemizing this then can help you formulate what your goals are, what job you want it to do. So it's adding a structure, which for some, just may feel imposing, but you try it on and then you try something else. It's just, it's visual thinking. One way I like to think of it is a tool that helps you build other tools for things. Oh,
absolutely.
So it's really kind of the gist of it. Okay, so here's my proposition. Why don't we go for another 5 more? Can we go for another 5 minutes to 1:35? So we kind of have 2 options here. I can share some views, but I'd love to see, Shelly, your thinking.
Yeah, go for it, Tom.
Okay. Woohoo! Okay, what do we have here? We have a full, nice. Shelly, can you describe your diagram?
Sure. So on the current side, you have the current issues on the left. On the desired side on the right, you have the corollary solution to each issue. And in the middle, you have sort of the crux of the problem. At the most general, high level, the issue is that language is hard. And then around that, on the top, on the one hand, designers have their own language. On the other hand, customers have their own language. Mm-hmm. Agreement is not always there. Mm-hmm. Then at the next level, engineers need to make decisions based on what the designers give them. Mm-hmm. And the language that the designers give them becomes something that can be baked into the product. And on the other side, different customers have different language for the same thing. How do you manage that? And the result of all of this is frustration, confusion, and interestingly, a lot of technical debt, because making a shift downstream, like we've seen in social media when Twitter moved from a word saying like to a heart, it caused a lot of pandemonium for a lot of people back in 2010 or whatever that was. So like those sorts of issues have real impact on people.
This is great. Now, what I would do as a facilitator is then dive deeply into the current state to actually illustrate where messaging doesn't make sense about them. So you've used words such as user and others. Sorry, I'm not remembering the other words. But there's a whole list of with nomenclature. So what are the top 15 words or 15 concepts? And so what's the current jumble on one side, and what would be the desired state? So the thing is that in this type of diagram, you don't actually know what the desired state actually is. You don't select the words. You make the assertion that you want a standardized set of words. Maybe. I mean, that may be the solution. It may not be.
Yeah, the toolkit itself has to be able to accommodate for emergent understanding. Because even among customers, what we see in our space is that they are developing their ideas, their vocabularies, their paradigms. And what they lack is the sort of flexibility with software products to be able to do that. And what often happens is that things like decisions among software companies can actually lock in those end users to ideas that otherwise they wouldn't be locked into. We don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's so well said. When we were developing Maya, which was a high-end visual graphic tool 25 years ago, my goodness, even the nomenclature of noun, verb, noun, determine the interaction. So do you pick the object and then perform the action, rotate, or do you pick the action, rotate, transform, and then the object? So it deals with muscle memory and how people think and kind of the whole organization, and that's just multiplied multiple times. I think what would be pretty interesting for you is to do, when you work on this as part of your thinking process diagram, come on, Sketchbook, is identify users, the stakeholders. We'll just draw 4 of them for now, and then clarify the words that are used. I'm just going to draw little symbols for the words for each of the stakeholder, and then arrange them in the usage. So, for example, word A is organized. Like there's a different jumble when it comes to frequency of use and meaning, and whether it's used like that, right? So from there you can begin to look at the overall structure. So again, creating the researching and understanding what is the mental model of each of these stakeholders and making that mental model visible, and then comparing and contrasting becomes a powerful tool for conversation, and maybe even a tool for designers to think about this, but also to even bring people to a common framework. Now, it's not just words. Of course, there is the action, and you know, I mean, there's a whole level of hierarchy, as you know, of the communication messages, the sentences that are used, the visualizations, and so just posting them all on one shared visualization space gets everything out of everyone's head into a single shared framework that you can then go, what about this? What about this? And then the conversation then becomes more tangible. When Microsoft launched, or they needed to fix one of their operating systems, I think it was, one of them was particular, Windows 98, I think, Windows Me. And so there was some real challenges with it. And so a new designer came in and it was just a mess. So it filled up a 40-foot whiteboard of the whole structure. And there was only then that they could all have the same teams work together to figure stuff out. So we're coming to the end of our time here, and as you can see, we've just kind of scratched the surface. But let me show you some thoughts on how we could tackle each of these. Again, yeah, there's again visual. I'm kind of walking you through slowly because I just wanted to illustrate the thinking that we could illustrate. So Greg, I was doing some doodling on yours, thinking about a communication strategy, and so maybe there's an overall framework that could be used, to show the new users the path from where they are to where they would like to be. What does that vision actually look like? And how do you communicate? There's 7 steps typically in communication of doing a change orientation document. Number 1 is clarifying the context. So you've just joined, and that's really important. What's the vision? That's successful integration with a team. What are the specific? Or actually, number 3, what's in it for you? Do that and you will get these benefits. Don't do that, and here's what's the downsides. I didn't finish this drawing here, so I'll just finish it. What's required from you, going from where you are to where you want to be. That's where the diagram comes in. And then typically there's 2 more. I guess I didn't finish this. One is next steps. So what should you do? And then finally there is paint a picture of what success looks like. And so it's kind of it's a standard model which can be visualized in different ways, but it becomes a powerful tool. I was also looking at what you were illustrating, beginning to kind of doodle what a kind of overall diagram might, organizational diagram of symbols and contribution and connection. These are the 7 areas that you were listing here, and then putting it up on the wall and figuring out what's the shift for each of them, from having no symbols to having symbols, from not working in reality to working in reality, from what are the activities that you have to what's current. And so these are kind of these posters that can be used that you go, that's great. And then invite people to go, what's missing from this? What else would you add from this? It becomes, you've gone from a push communication tool to a tool that it becomes an active engagement. So again, these are just some initial doodles, which again, we're just illustrating. Again, some sketches that I've made here. Happy to share those with you. Shelly, I had a whole bunch here. So there's a fantastic set of books by a fellow named Alex Osterwalder. We'll put this into form for you, that illustrates the value propositions, where you figure out what are the needs, the jobs of each of the customers, you figure out the value for each, and then you create a statement, a visual statement. Again, I'm not able to go into this depth, but I'll give you some resources about how you can kind of map all of those different elements at a high level, and then use some of those maps that I've just described. So you then you figure out if there is a common unifying language or not. And so that's really the choice. I mean, sometimes a common unifying language can dilute and destroy the specificity that you're looking for. But again, these were some notes which will make sense for you when you explore later. Laura, some thoughts of having a group of people, maybe that's a think tank, and then it's a tool that you can basically provide a catalog of tools that you might be able to use that are simple and complex, that are thinking tools, and then communication or collaboration tools that can be used in 5 minutes, in 30 minutes, and so on. So what would that poster look like that illustrates all of the tools or methods in a framework that people can both navigate and pick from? And then, so typically there's a couple of diagnostics, which are, what's the framework, and then another is how much time, and then you kind of go into each of these, kind of the library of tools there. So just some thoughts on how that might work. And
Thanks, Tom.
yeah, happy. And where's my UFO thing?
We all know you really want to play with the UFOs. We get it.
Oh, we all?
Yes, we do.
Sorry, I gotta. And then we'll close from there. Wrong one. Sorry, I gotta go to my sketches. Did I tell you I make a lot of sketches? Just open this one up here. So as a thinking tool, I mean, it's so awesome to use visual tools as a thinking tool. So beginning here with UFOs. So if you were to do this visually, I would say create a mood board. Use Miro or a physical board to gather data and just basically just kind of first plaster everything onto a board. Pictures, I mean, so easy these days. Google images, put them on, and then you look at the data. Then what's triggering was the number of media stories. So what does that actually look like? And then I thought what would be interesting would be to explore some questions such as what's happening, what does this mean, who does this affect, and then what should we do? And so that kind of takes many of the questions that you explored, and we kind of dabbled with some of these last time. One is to look at the source data. And so, where are the geos? Where are the sighting? What's the history of this? And then what are the interpretations of this? So there's different layers of interpretation. What does this mean? Ranges from, I'm going to, on one side, put it's bias and imagination. We want to think, because of all kinds of reasons, that there are I mean, I would be the first guy, get in line going like, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if if we were being visited by aliens in advanced spacecraft, and UFOs are real. So here, what's interesting is you can create some type of visual structure that maps the ranges of beliefs from to aha. And then part of our work as a thinker and as a facilitator is to be willing to entertain other points of view, ones that feel uncomfortable, and to examine our own particular biases. As I mentioned, there are bias cards for that, to where we can really test them. And so, we just saw some amazing footage from 2010 and so of these spacecraft, and there's perfectly valid logical explanations of the polarizing filter of the device, the magnet, the geometry that makes them seem much faster than they currently are, the fact that they're in infrared, and the images are actually completely consistent with what you see in a typical jetliner, et cetera, et cetera. So like, oh, so the magic has disappeared. So part of the attraction for me is like, there's magic and mystery to the world, which of course there always is, but you kind of don't want that to disappear. Or do you? So again, part of our deep belief system. and so on. So there's kind of ways of ideating, doing decision trees, creating trade-offs, full systems model, and then eventually getting to different scenarios of the risk of UFO invasions and then the impact. Or maybe it's the risk of disinformation or misinformation, and then the impact. And then for each of these quadrants, figuring out what a potential output would be from the current to the desired state, and then creating a flow chart that would then illustrate it. So again, what this does is just provides structure, a bunch of different visual structures to help you interrogate and see the evolution and tracking of your thinking, and put it into a form that is vivid and testable. And you show these with other people who will go, that's wrong, that's right, what about this, what about that? And then you build up the full content.
Tom, I'm just going to chime in and say my biggest takeaway is not only to discipline myself to have a comfort level with the visual alphabet, but to disabuse myself of the idea and the urge to leap to a solution, leap to a perfect diagram, even an ugly one. And instead, I think the richest thing for me is visual tools to make other tools. Right? Yeah. Along the way, that's because I'm really wanting to parse critical thinking and to see how institutionally some versions of this visual thinking could be used to reframe things actively within teams in ugly, quick sketches to think better.
Absolutely. So here are some sketches that I've made. I as I said, I'm not exactly sure how many I have. 40,000, 35,000, 50,000, just in this digital format. Plus I've got walls of material. Plus I've done stuff for, TED and other organizations. And so these are kind of the starting points of these sketches, which then turn into other tools that, kind of look like this, and eventually tools that look like this. I'm not really sharing, tools that look like this, right? So you begin with the just thought, and then eventually turns into a working template that looks like this. So for those of you who are still on, I've shared about actually a small percentage of this kind of framework. And again, if you're interested in learning more about it, order before midnight tonight. Now check out Wicked Problem Solver. We have free tools, and we're really excited to expand and launch. Tell your friends about it. We're promoting it within Economist and HBR and other organizations. And it's a framework. We have the first course. We're going to have a number of other courses that include the very tightly scripted kind of TED Talks. With high quality videos, with digital mural boards. So we have about 50 or so digital mural boards that walk you through this process. It expands it actually, and there's collaboration templates, and it expands it into much more depth into not just the visualizations that you've seen, but to thinking about the questions that you're asking, thinking about the visualizations that you've seen, and thinking about the actions that you want people to take so that they solve individual problems, top-down, bottom-up problems. So there's the whole language for visual problem solving, whole framework. So again, there's playbooks that can be applied from a 5-minute conversation to a 15-minute conversation, to restructuring meetings, to solving very complex problems, to leading big change in an organization, to taming wickedness. It's all the same stuff. You're just using the same principles. Nodes and links connected together. Some of them happen to be just really, really big. So getting those really core tools, I'm super passionate about, to help organizations and individuals understand these tools, apply them from visual thinking, from design thinking, from lean, from cognitive neurology, from all these different forms, and just figure out what plays to run. So we haven't used this language, but we were just running plays, and the plays consist of a question, a diagram, and an action. So once you organize work in that way, magic happens. It's incredible what can happen, and that can happen in virtually and in person and hybrid models. So really excited about that. So you can just sign up for an email list. The next workshop, the next smaller course is going to be one on meetings. Another is going to be on visual thinking. Another is going to be on kind of the essentials. Another one on bias. So watch this spot in the next year, so you'll see all of these tools reframed to solve different kinds of problems. Okay, going to get off of my. So we've gone much longer. So those of you who have stayed, thank you so much. Hope you find this interesting and useful. And for the rest, enjoy the rest of your day. Hope it's productive and fruitful and fun.
Thank you so much, Tom. And I can, speaking for the Polyplexus community, it's like a juicy, really fun start and a challenge to us to follow up on the basics of developing a visual language for critical thinking in science. It's
totally worth it. Impress your friends, engage your colleagues, and it's just such a powerful and underused tool to help people do three things: think better, collaborate better, and make your ideas clear so other people get it. It all boils down to that.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. Thanks again, Tom, and to my fellow participants. You were good sports and hopefully made progress on your big ideas or inquiries, and more and soon to one and all.
All right. Be well, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.